on how muscles work. All right, so last week of class, dead days do not affect lecture. It just means we can't give you exams and tests leading up to final exams. That'd kind of be double jeopardy. So that's what that means. So we still get class Wednesday and Friday. We'll go over some, it's not even exceptions. It's just non-traditional. Most of the time our movement is slow and controlled, activities of daily living. And then sometimes we got to go fast, like in Talladega Nights, hashtag Ricky Bob. And so we're going to talk about some of those exceptions. I like to call them functional tasks, things that are not normal activities of daily living, but sometimes we got to kill the mosquito on our leg, or sometimes we got to hammer in the nail. And so we're going to talk about those today. We'll probably continue that on Wednesday, and then Friday we're going to get into understanding stretching and how to use the information we've talked about in class in terms of position, understanding how muscles pull. And so anytime you lengthen something that pulls, that's how you're going to stretch it. So position, all this talk of position is really going to help us when we talk about stretching, because understanding positions of joints are going to help us understand who's getting lengthened, who's getting pulled. Okay, so it's going to help us avoid confusion. So one of the rules we have, well, a couple of main rules we have, is we do not assume. We do not assume, we do not assume, we do not assume. I say it a lot of times, but until you take tests and you see the questions that, oh, I assumed, I get it. So we don't assume. So here I'm giving you two examples of how there is a hammer involved, but we can't assume that there's going to be similar muscles and function, right? So the one on the right side, she's doing an exercise. And when you're doing a rehab exercise or a traditional exercise, most of the time there's going to be slow and controlled motion. Instead of activities of daily living, I'll say an exercise of daily living. You're going to have nice, easy range of motion so that you can innervate the muscles, not have more damage. It's an exercise. But on the picture on the left, if I did slow and controlled motion to get the hammer to the nail, that nail is never going to go into that board. Does that kind of make some logical sense? So in other words, if the nail's on the board and I have my hammer, the hammer is trying to extend me, I'm going to need flexors. If I hold this position, the hammer is never going to meet the nail. If I allow the extension to happen slower than gravity, the hammer will eventually meet the nail, but it will never drive the nail into the wood. If I turn off all my muscles, I'm giving you every possible scenario here. If I turn off all my muscles and say, well, gravity can do that, let me see what gravity can offer. It may tap it, but probably not going to drive the nail into the ground. So we did all the possible scenarios. Flexors isometric, that's not going to happen. Flexors eccentric, that's not going to happen. Gravity alone, that's not going to happen. So what's left? The extensors pulling in the same direction as gravity in this case. In other words, gravity is like, I could extend the elbow to bring the hammerhead to the nail, and the extensors say, hey, I can also bring the hammerhead to the nail. And so in this case, because there is a functional task, there is a reason, sometimes gravity and muscles can team up and say, hey, let me pull with muscles in the same direction as gravity to make extension happen faster than gravity. Muscles can only pull. That would be concentric contraction. It would have to be, because those elbow extensors are making that extension happen faster than gravity. Working above rest, doing a job. So we've always tried to identify agonists based on their purpose. What are they trying to do? Does that make sense? Okay. What speeds up must slow down. Talk about what goes up must come down, but what speeds up must slow down, especially in normal range of motion. Because remember, one of our illusions is in exercise, people will talk about a movement, but that movement is really just a range of motion caused by two movements to get you back to the same place. In other words, if we start in Lafayette and we go east, to get back to where we started, we got to go west. We have to do two different movements in order to do another repetition. What speeds up must slow down. Usually in exercise, let me pull up an example here. What's going to, I know I saved it. Let's do this one. External force trying to flex my knees. This exercise is going to work my knee extensors. Why don't we say quad? Because that doesn't infer what they're doing. Okay. What speeds up must slow down. Speeding up the knee flexion, extensors, eccentric contraction. But eventually something's got to slow it down. Something's got to slow down that range of motion. Something's got to slow down that flexion. Sometimes people let the weights clang. That'll slow you down. Clangers. But my muscles in this case would want to probably, if I didn't want to bang the weights, right, my muscles would work a little bit more to slow down my flexion, create my extension. At the top, I can kind of relax and let gravity slow it down. Sometimes gravity can slow down something when it's going slow enough. Now think about your face during a squat. If you were doing a max, you'd get the bar off of the plate, you'd kind of get mentally prepared. And then you'd start to go down. And then at the bottom, you've given a lot of effort, right? Like Kelly Clarkson, right? At the bottom, it's very tough because your muscles have to slow you down and your muscles have to speed you up. But at the top, once you can kind of relax because it's gravity that can slow down that little bit of motion at the top. The reason I'm telling you this is we have to understand that what speeds up must slow down. In the case of the hammer and the nail, my elbow extensors through concentric contraction is going to speed up my extension because there's a functional reason to. I got to make that hammerhead go faster than what gravity can offer. But what's going to slow down my extension? Not muscles in this case, just literally the collision of the hammerhead and the nail. I didn't need muscles. Think of it like this. Where are my baseball, softball players? When you make contact with a ball, it definitely doesn't hurt as much when you miss. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody that's played ball has understand that. In other words, when you swing and miss, your muscles have to slow down everything versus when you make contact, that collision actually kind of helps negatively accelerate you, right? It doesn't hurt as much. Clapping your hands. What speeds up must slow down. Well, what sped up my hands? We're going to talk about that today. What slowed down my hands? This hand smacking up against this one, and this hand smacking up against that one. What sped up my shoulders? We're going to talk about that. What slowed down my shoulders? Literally the collision of my hands on my side. This leg slowed down this one, just like the nail slowed down the hammer, and this leg slowed down this one. Okay? What speeds up must slow down, and we have functional tasks that sometimes we have to use muscles in the same direction, correct? So let's do this example. We're going to clap some hands. I know there's a lot of different ways to clap hands. It really doesn't matter to this example, except the first one I'm going to use is hand clapping in the direction of gravity. So in other words, like an up and down clap. This is kind of an across clap. We're going to do an up and down clap. In addition, I'm just going to use my elbows. In addition, we don't assume. Gravity is trying to extend my left and gravity is trying to extend my right. However, if my right extends, the hand's going to go further away from my other hand on my right side. Does that make sense? So in terms of analyzing motion, when my hands come together, I'm going to have extension on my left elbow, but I'm actually going to have flexion on my right. True? Because we don't assume. If I just let my right elbow stay in the same position, thank you isometrics of my right elbow flexion pullers, and I use my extensors on my left, I'm going to make a noise, but probably won't be as loud in terms of a collision as if I move both of them. True? So if I want to bring my hands closer together, using the clues, gravity's trying to do this, I'm trying to bring my right hand up, I'm going to use flexors through concentric contraction to do that. Make sense? But this elbow, because I don't assume, is actually, gravity's trying to do something here. I could use flexors via eccentric, but that's going to be slower than what gravity can offer. I could just let gravity do it, but I know a way that I can actually make that extension happen faster than gravity. And that's actually using my extension pulls, my triceps, my econias, and pulling down in the same direction as gravity to make my hand go faster than what gravity could offer by itself. So when I do this, it's literally my extensors of this elbow working concentric with flexors of this elbow working concentric. Make sense? Cool? Now, once we have collision, there's some other things happening. My wrist flexors need to work isometric to prevent my wrist from buckling down. This wrist flexors, these are going to work isometrically to prevent this. So it's about task. It's about what's working because we're trying to understand why they are working. Okay? What if there is no external force? Well, we're on Earth and there's always gravity from planet Earth, but that's always in one direction relative to the ground. Okay? Nothing's trying to make you go across in your activities of daily living. And because muscles can only pull, I gave this example. I went and found a little car outside my boys were playing with. Let me try to zoom in here. So you see the little car analogy. Gravity's not trying to make that car roll across the table. So if I want to make the car go this way, I have to pull in that direction. I have to shorten while trying to shorten. I have to use concentric contraction to make something start moving if there's nothing else trying to make it move, because muscles can't push. Okay? So think about things that when you were just sitting or standing, nothing's trying to make you look to the right. So you have to make yourself look to the right. Nothing's trying to make you look to the left. You have to make yourself look to the left. Make sense? And what speeds up must slow down. So if I have to make myself look to the right using concentric contraction of right transverse cervical rotators, those same muscles can't push me to a stop. These muscles are going to make me look to the right, and then eventually, when I decide to stop, they're actually going to turn off because they've done their job. And the ones that pull the other way will now turn on and put on the brake. Slow down my motion looking to the right. You know what I don't want? I don't want ligaments and tissues at the end of my range of motion to slow me down. That doesn't sound very safe. Look to the right. Concentric to speed up, eccentric to slow down, concentric to speed up, eccentric to slow down. That's how muscles work. You may have heard a concept in another class called like a stretch shortening cycle. It's really what it amounts to. Muscles being lengthened to slow you down, then they're going to shorten to speed you up. They're going to turn off the ones on the other side. Their antagonists will now become the agonists, slow you down, speed you up. Slow you down, speed you up. Those are exceptions. It's not exceptions to the rules of muscles. Muscles only pull, but it's exceptions to our activities of daily living. Most of our movements are very slow and controlled, but sometimes we got to go fast. Okay? Let's do some more exception examples. Let's see what else I got here. So this guy looks to his right. There's no external forces trying to make him look to his right. So he has to use right transverse cervical rotators through concentric contraction to make himself look to the right. But those same muscles that shorten to speed you up to the right can't push you to a stop. So concentric contraction to make you right transverse, then they are going to turn off, and then the left transverse pullers are going to put on the brake. Guys, it's no different than when you're in a car and you're pressing the gas to go, and when it comes time to stop, you got to take your foot off of that pedal and press an entire new pedal. It's very similar. These are going to turn off. The brakes are going to turn on, and maybe these muscles continue to pull to make you look this way. Then you got to take your foot off of that pedal and put on the other pedal. It's concentric, eccentric, concentric, eccentric, concentric, eccentric. Kind of gets dizzy. So I'm going to do another example. If we were going to clap like with a straight arm, like a seal. There's no force trying to make my hands come together in my transverse plane, right? Gravity's trying to do this. Get gravity or no external force is trying to make my hands come together. So that tells me right away, muscles that pull this way are going to speed me up that way. And muscles that pull that way are going to speed me up that way. But muscles that pull this way can slow me down that way. And muscles that pull this way can slow me down this way. It's like putting on the brake. So think about this for a second. What if I do a few repetitions, but I don't actually clap? Because when I clap, the collision, this stops this, this stops this. But what if I don't clap? What if I stop myself? What if I put on the brake? Horizontal adductors are going to speed up my horizontal adduction through concentric contraction. But those muscles can't push me to a stop. Sometimes you're going to go to hit the nail and then realize, oh, I'm in the wrong spot. You may want to put on the brake at the last second. So you go to hammer it in, extensors, concentric, but then all of a sudden at the last second you realize I don't want to swing at that. I don't want to hit the nail. Well, those extensors can't push you to a stop. You have to turn these off and then turn these on to slow down that extension. Same scenario. Horizontal adductors concentrically, but horizontal abductors eccentrically to put on the brake. Concentric to speed up, eccentric of a different agonist to put on the brake, because that's how muscles work. And you may say, dude, how many times are we going to be doing this? Not often, but you are going to be doing this a lot. Sometimes, a lot of times in sport. And so it's very similar. When the sprinter, baseball, soccer, basketball, doesn't matter, when you're sprinting, when you're moving your arms and your legs faster than what gravity can offer, gravity might be trying to extend you. And you say, well, I could use my flexors, but that would go slower than what gravity can offer. Let me use my extensors to pull down to help gravity extend me as fast as possible. But those muscles that sped up my extension can't push me to a stop. Eventually, when it comes time to put on the brake, to slow down that motion, I have to turn these muscles off and I have to turn these muscles on to put on the brake, to slow down the extension. And it still follows our rules. When it comes time to slow down, extension, put on the brake. Flexors are going to slow down my extension through eccentrics. Extensors sped up my extension through concentrics. Flexors slow down the extension through eccentrics. Flexors are going to still continue to work, change my direction, and speed up the flexion through concentrics. Flexors sped up flexion through concentrics. But once again, these flexors, when I'm speeding up, when I'm flexing as fast as I can, when I'm sprinting, these flexors can't speed me up and then push me to slow down. And not only that, I don't want gravity alone to do it. If you let gravity slow down your upward motion, it would look like this. I'm doing it side to side because it's more silly. It takes too long. I'm trying to put on the brake as fast as possible. Thank you, gravity, for your help, but I need more. I need more than that. So what's going to help gravity slow down my flexion? Extension pullers. Extension pullers pulling down are going to slow down the flexion through eccentrics and then speed up the extension through concentrics. Guys, we have a word for that I know you've heard before. Slowing down motion through eccentrics being lengthened, changing direction, and speeding up movement through concentric. It's called plyometrics. True plyometrics isn't a separate contraction. It's a specific sequence of contractions. And it's a specific sequence on purpose because that is the only thing muscles can do back to back where they are responsible for influencing that motion. And I'll give you some examples why and how. Your three types of contractions: concentric, eccentric, isometric. But if we do a eccentric followed by a concentric, that is a plyometric sequence. Let me explain why the eccentric followed by the concentric is really the only sequence that can happen where a muscle was responsible for that change. And it's because muscles cannot push. So at this, I pulled it, I speed it up. I can't push it to a stop. I can't then push to a stop. But you know what I can do? If the car is rolling away from me and I start pulling, I can slow the being lengthened, change its direction, and make it short. But once it has motion in my direction of pull, I can't push it to a stop. Why plyometrics is eccentric slowing down. Got to put on the brake, change the direction, and concentric to speed up. Why is this sequence so important to understand for you clinicians, fitness professionals? Guys, that's where the most damage is done. That's the danger zone. That's where you're going to have the greatest chance of tearing something, popping something, ripping something. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. This means we have to understand where that muscle is going to be working at its greatest tension. Think about it. A rope doesn't pop when it's shortening. A rope pops or frays when it's being pulled apart. True? If I had a TheraBand, that TheraBand's not going to pop while it's getting shortened. That TheraBand's going to pop when it's being pulled apart. That's when the force is the highest on those stored elastic potential energy structures. being pulled apart. Tension, okay? Let's do another practice example. Boink. All right, here we go. Let's see if that should be big enough. Okay, guys, let's pretend. I think that's from the War Boy. Visualize an attack. Pretend. All right, jumping jacks. Guys, this class is not meant to tell you how to do jumping jacks. I don't care. I'm here to teach you how muscles influence motion through contraction, okay? So if you were doing jumping jacks, I don't care if you clap at the top, clap on the bottom, do clap, don't care. But for the sake of these examples, let's say you had an incentive to do as many of them as possible in 10 seconds a time. Let's say you got $10 for every jumping jack you did in 10 seconds. And there's some rules. These rules are just meant for us to help us understand these concepts that I'm trying to teach you. You can't clap at the top, because if I do, this hand stops that one and this hand stops that one. That's like stopping your car not because of your brake, but stopping the car because you collided into something. Okay? So you have to stop before you collide up here, and you have to stop before you collide down here for the same reasons. Because if I collide down here, this leg stop this arm, this leg stop that arm. In other words, I want you to see how my muscles are going to put on the brake, how my muscles are going to put on the gas, and then different muscles are going to put on the brake. Then those same muscles are going to put on the gas, and then different muscles are going to put on the brake. Think of it like this before I get into the example. An agonistic group, muscles that pull in a specific direction of motion, can put on the brake, and then those same agonists can transition to put on the gas. In other words, I can slow down motion in one way of pull, change its direction, and speed it up in the same direction of pull. But once I have motion in my direction of pull, I cannot push it to a stop. I have to rely on my partners pulling in the other direction to put on the brake, and then continue on to put on the gas. And then it could be my turn to put on the brake and put on the gas. You see how these things are? I'm trying to get you to see how they work. And it's super convenient, because while my partner is slowing it down and speeding it up, I get to kind of breathe. I get to take a breath, recharge my batteries, and then it's like, okay, now it's my turn. As many jumping jacks as you can in 10 seconds is any external force trying to abduct my shoulders if my hands are at my side. So I have to use abductors through concentric contraction, right? I have to make myself abduct. Abductors, speed up my abduction through concentrics. Gravity could slow down my abduction, but I'm trying to make money. I don't want gravity alone to do it, because gravity is a very weak force. It is persistent as all heck, but it's weak. Newborn babies beat gravity with their arms. I mean, gravity is not very strong. So if I'm trying to slow down my abduction in as little time as possible, and I know that I can't push with my abductors, I have no choice but to turn these pullers off and turn these pullers on. Adduction pullers are going to slow down my abduction. Adductors are going to slam on the brakes of abduction through eccentric contraction. Guys, you may not see it, and that's okay. Our eyes cannot process but so many frames per second. What I mean by that is, could you literally see my hand stopping? Watch, I'll do it as fast as I can, 10 straight times. Do you want to see that again? It's pretty quick. I'll do it again. Do you want to see that again? It's a joke, guys, dad joke. The point is that it happens fast. Our eyes can't process it, So we just assume it stopped instantaneously. Nothing stops instantaneously. Everything takes time to stop. Okay? So just because we don't see it, doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Got to slow it down before I can bring it back, right? Abduction pullers are going to slam on the brakes through eccentric to slow down my abduction, continue to pull to speed up my adduction. That's a plyometric sequence. Slowing down because of eccentric, continuing to pull to speed up through concentric. Now, gravity could abduct me, but again, gravity's super weak. I'm not going to make as much money if I just let gravity abduct me. Doesn't make sense if I'm trying to do as many as possible. I want to continue to use those adduction pullers in the direction of gravity to make myself adduct faster than what gravity can offer. Adductors are going to do adduction through concentric contraction. But the same muscles that sped me up, that put on that gas in adduction, can't push me to a stop. So once it comes time to put on the brakes, once it comes time to slow down my adduction, and I'm not going to collide with the sides, I have to turn these downward pullers off, and I got to turn these upward pullers on. Abductors are going to slow down the adduction through eccentrics. They're going to stay pulling to change my direction, and then I'm going to complete the cycle all over again. Stretch shortening cycle. Abductors concentric, adductors eccentric, adductors concentric, abductors eccentric, abductors concentric, adductors eccentric, adductors concentric, abductors eccentric, adductors concentric. As many repetitions as I do. Does that make sense? Let's break it down. If she's at the top, and I said she's trying to bring her arms down as fast as she can at her side, does it make sense she wouldn't use abduction pullers? It's all of that. We're going to break it down simply. Even though gravity can adduct her, if she's trying to do it faster than what gravity can offer and muscles can't push, her only option is to use muscles that are yanking down. That's all I'm trying to get to. And if she's trying to transition from yanking her arms down to getting her arms back up, eventually she's got to turn these off and turn these on. And these are going to... That's how it sounds when you have a step. Any questions? All right, let's do some application. Let's go back to our across clap, okay? No external forces in the horizontal. True? I'm not on a machine that's trying to make me do anything, okay? Give this some thought. I start here, and then you observe, absolutely. Bring the phones, bring the cameras, or it's on here. Start here, and you observe this. I did it super slow so we can all see it. Let's do it again. We analyze motion joint by joint. We analyze muscles joint by joint. It's a shoulder conversation, okay? Shoulder conversation. You know that there was horizontal ab followed by horizontal ad. All we're adding is what did that? What was responsible? How did it do it? How is it responsible? How did I get my hands to go apart and come back together as fast as I could? There's no external force trying to make my hands go apart, and there's no external force trying to make my hands come together. So I had to use horizontal abduction pullers through concentric contraction to speed up my horizontal abduction. True? Those same muscles, if they just continued to work, I would literally pull my arms apart until the ones that pull in the other direction get stretched so much that I have no choice but for them to slow me down. I didn't go way out here. So eventually, I have to turn these off and turn these pullers on. My horizontal adductors are going to slow down the ab, change my direction, and speed up the ad. And it's okay that we didn't see it because it happens fast. We just have to use common sense to say it had to happen. What speeds up must slow down. You can't be moving one way and instantaneously go the other. You have to slow down first. There has to be slow down of motion before you can speed up the other way. It's just common sense. Guys, even when a ball leaves a bat, it looks like it's instantaneous. No, the ball is literally being compressed into the bat as it slows down and then leaps off the bat as it speeds up. It just happens so fast. We don't see it. But just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Horizontal abductors, concentric contraction, speeding up the horizontal abduction. What speeds up must slow down. I have to slow down that horizontal abduction. But those same muscles can't push me to a stop. I have to use my inward pullers, my horizontal adductors to slow down the abduction, change my direction, and then speed up the horizontal adduction through concentric contraction. That's plyometrics. That's plyometrics. I did, when I was working as an athletic trainer at Dateville High School, I was in my mid-20s, and some great kids, man. They talk funny. Or maybe it was me. Maybe I was the one that talked. And they were like, Mr. Bryan, did you play football? I was like, yeah, it was small schools. So immediately it was let's race. Oh, gosh, all right. I did 3 races. I hadn't exercised and trained in a while. Guys, I was sore in all of my upper extremity the next day. I didn't lift weights, but I did a lot of plyometrics. I did a lot of eccentrics. I did a lot of slowing down and speeding up my shoulders and my scapula. That's damage. Putting on the brake. Let me ask you this. For those of you that have vehicles, do you ever have to take your car in the shop to change anything with the gas pedal? It's always the brakes. You got to change out your brakes because that's where the damage is at, is in the brakes. Putting on the brakes is where there's damage. So my students, we have to identify the braking. We have to identify the eccentrics of slowing down motion. It's one of the biggest ironies to me of kinesiology that someone pulls a hip flexor, but they were extending when they injured that muscle because it was the flexion pullers that was slowing down the extension. So you may feel it when you flex, but the damage was done when you were extending. Make sense? Let's think of some other practical examples. I'll tell you what, let's go back to the original because I'm probably going to ask a question like this. Okay, we're going to start in a flexed position, my elbow. Let's say instead of hitting the nail, I stop right before. Because again, it's the wrong nail, wrong place. So I'm going to have fast extension, faster than what gravity can offer, but I choose at the last second to not collide the hammer with the nail. My question to you is, what agonistic group can slow down that motion, and through what contraction must it slow down that motion? So I'm giving you the answers, or answer choices. It's either flexors through concentric, flexors through eccentric, extensors through concentric, extensors to eccentric. We know it's not flexors to isometric, there's motion. If you're slowing down motion, guys, there's motion. If you're going 15 miles an hour and you slam on your brakes, there's motion in slowing down. So it's either flexors concentric, flexors eccentric, extensors concentric, extensors eccentric. Give that some thought. Don't answer it out loud because I want everybody to give it some thought. Remember, the practical example is I'm going to speed up my extension faster than gravity. Who did that and how? We did that earlier. But I'm going to decide not to smack it. I want to put on the brake. I'm going to prevent that hammer from hitting that nail. And the irony is your body already knows who to recruit. If you were doing that task, your body knows how to do that. I just need to get your mind to communicate what your body already knows. That's all this is. Your body already knows which muscles to recruit and how to recruit them. I just need you to get you to say it. Okay? Give that some thought for a second. All right, the answer is flexors through eccentric contraction. In fact, I wouldn't suggest doing this, but if you just wanted to be like, I don't believe you, okay, it's cool. Take a hammer and a nail and don't hit it and do 50 reps of just stopping it right at the end. And you tell me how your elbow feels in the morning. You tell me where you have soreness at. You tell me where it seems like you have delayed onset muscle soreness. I guarantee you it's in your flexors. Does that make sense? It's going to be these muscles putting on the brake. I don't play basketball anymore because I'm getting too old. Can't afford to get hurt. But when I haven't shot in a while and I go back to shooting, I'm not sore on my extension pullers. I'm not sore on the muscles that make my elbow extend. I'm sore on the muscles that slow my elbow extension down. Because I don't want bone to slow me down. I don't want ligaments to slow me down. When it comes time to slow down the extension, I'm turning off my extensors and I'm turning on my flexors, and they're going to put on the brake before bone smacks up against bone, before ligament pulls against bone. So the next day, I'm sore in my flexion pullers because they were using a lot of brake. And like I said, in your car, the brakes is what gives out. The brakes is what has damage. There's damage in braking things, not slowing things down. Okay? Any questions about the lessons for today? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because the same, it would be eccentric because your extension pullers, all they can do is speed up the extension. They can't push you to a stop. So when it comes time to slowing down the extension, my only option is flexion pullers. And we use our equation to understand how flexion pullers put on the brakes of extension through eccentric contraction.
If it were to come back up, would that be eccentric? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The flexion pullers are going to make you flex through concentric. But what's really cool is, let's say I was aiming. I was going to try to hit the nail in one shot. So I'm just kind of aiming at it, right? If I really wanted to create momentum of that hammerhead, I would probably do something like this. Fast flexion, flexors concentric, extensor slowing down the flexion, extensor speeding up the extension, and smack. Of those same muscles. And that's kind of cool. Like it's trying to teach you guys that muscles pulling in one direction can put on the brakes while they're being lengthened, change the direction and make you come back. And it's more forceful because what you're gaining while those muscles are being pulled apart is what we call stored elastic potential energy. You're being stretched and creating lots of energy. It's like a rubber band. It's like stretching a rubber band and letting it go. And you get energy while that rubber band is being stretched that you can convert in the motion back in the direction. It's the same thing. Very simple. We have rubber band stuff in our muscles. Good question. Did that clarify everything? All right, you guys. We'll see you Wednesday.